the motorcycle which we never dreamt of, but got as a limb for that middle class man. The motorcycle which enriched the definition of practicality and morale. The motorcycle which gave Indians the true prospect of a four-stroke engine. The motorcycle which fulfilled the dream of getting more miser than a miser can be. It's all about the tail, the bike which never grew up. As the boring history lesson, we have to get down to the memory lane and recall all the motorcycles which were available in the late 70s or the 80s. Oh my word. This is the motorcycle which we all know in today's generation, and back in the day was the only masculine, the full cruiser, the wholly sophisticated, the more mightier and the most powerful of all. And after all, it's a four-stroke engine. We all know it as the Royal Enfield Bullet 350. Back in the day, this motorcycle was built by Enfield India, and Aisha had no stakeholding whatsoever back in the day. Was the most modern four-stroke motorcycles which are available at the point of time. Has good purr, has good sound, had good gas efficiency, and has good power. All the way you can see how the price of the motorcycles was so low. Just 8,527. This was an all bike. Because back in the day everything was two-stroke, and the only motorcycle which you can afford was a Rajdoot 175. Being a two-stroke, it was mimicked that the two strokes take very less fuel than the four strokes, and they can give good gas mileage. But at the time of 70s, very rare options were there for the motors of India, and to counter the Royal Enfield, whatever it takes was not a big of a problem. Many occasions, if you can see, why the Enfield was the most important factor. It's not all about the motorcycle which was brought by the very Indian army for the harsh terrains which were available in the Himalayan mountain ranges and so forth. Enfield India decided to bring up this motorcycle for the civilians. So in the late 60s, the 350cc and the 500cc's were the only option which were available in the market. Was four-stroke overhead valve considered the most advanced technology back in the day, with Mikuni carburetors in the late 80s. Before that, Amel carburetors were availed with these motorcycles. And it was true in the 90s. As the advertisements say, tough guys don't dance. But definitely, tough guys can dance, but the thing is that it's depend upon you whether you can take that dance in a serious way or the most hilarious way possible. So it was the only option back in the day, to have a fuel economy motorcycle as well as powerful and all that stance. But the thing is that how sophisticated it was. Well, the thing is, along with a four-stroke engine, it had a neutral finder, and so far as electricals were concerned, back in the day, it was the only motorcycle in which the headlamp was able to glow from its battery power. Though we're all 6 volts, but yeah, this was it. And the amp meter was playing a bigger role in a way which gives a oomph while you are starting this motorcycle up in your cold morning days. But what happened generally in the 1980s to 1990s? Well, those kids, those people who were belonging from 80s, they know very well what happened. A catastrophe for these motorcycles, like we are talking about the Enfield, right? We are talking about the SD or the Rajdoot. Well, Escorts was making up its pact to bring up the best motorcycle possible, and we will be taking that consideration in the next slides. So, meanwhile, Yamaha thought to bring up a befitting reply for the Enfield 350 by bringing up the Yamaha Rajdoot. SD2, though they were parted their ways from Java in the late 60s, but somehow they brought up the 350cc twin along with them. They were so crazy that they thought that even if detuning these two motorcycles, I mean, if you take about the Rajdoot 350, the international version of that motorcycle was churning out 40 horses from that teeny meaty 350cc engine. But it was ruthlessly detuned to just 29 horses. And if you talk about the SD 350, was the same case, was producing about 22 horses. But nevertheless, they were too powerful, and the RD 350 was standing for the rapid death instead of race developed. You may say at that point of time these two motorcycles were infamous for their performance categories. But nowadays they are being worshipped like almighty. Sourcing one of these motorcycles is a pain in a butt. But something today's young generation are freakingly looking after these motorcycles to get the next swing over one of these machines and to turn over. But the thing is, by detuning, companies were thinking that yes, it may surpass the gas efficiency of the Royal Enfield Bullet by detuning these machines. But after all they detuned in a way which is something like a very disgusting task. It didn't maintain the while, because Yamaha 350 at the other hand, if it is well maintained and if you are riding at a speed of 60, then you may consider that the motorcycle may give you or may return you about 20 to 22 kilometers per liter. And same case it went with the SD 350. But as the 1985 arrived, we saw the Indian Suzuki AX100. Basically, Indian Suzuki is what we know as TVS Suzuki after some point of time. They first started with their Super XL type of mopeds back in the day, in the late 80s. As 85 was getting approached, Indian Suzuki or the TVS Suzuki AX100 was launched in the market. Basically, this motorcycle had three variants. The AC, which had headlamps and tail lamps with no batteries whatsoever. Then the DC with a battery, 12 volt electric and indicators and all that functionaries. It was a 100cc motorcycle with 8.7 horses and was capable of achieving 100 km per hour speed. But so far as fuel efficiency of this motorcycle was concerned, it was not that bad. The sources say that if in a good day with good gas, if you are putting up the motorcycle on spaces, definitely it may return to you about 50 to 55 kmpl at max. At the same time, the ahead of the hundreds, Escorts learned from its mistakes by detuning the Rajdoot 175 so much and the blunder they did with the Rajdoot 350. Finally, they gave up and thought to bring up the 100cc motorcycle in the Indian market. So you can understand the market went ferocious at the late 80s, and many of us 90s kids, we don't know what the 80s went on, but this is something like it was a serious rival back in the day. All of a sudden you are sleeping under a banyan tree, but if a hockey game is being played on in a compound, suddenly your everything gets off and you just stare, what happened, why this land is shocking around like that. And it's all about the pacemaking and it's all about the competition back in the day. The Yamaha RX100 came with 6 volt electrics, 11 horsepower, which was totally unheard back in the day. Look at that small tiny 98cc engine. Could you believe it is producing 11 horses? Certainly not, but it was. A reed valve powered engine with 7-port torque induction was something to be feared of. Because if you compare this RX100 with that of AX100 from Suzuki, Suzuki had just 5-port torque induction with no reed valves whatsoever back in the time. But due to this RX100, Suzuki forced to bring up the AX100 Supra, which housed the reed valve technology and was about to achieve 10 horsepower. But still, Yamaha RX100 gained the fame. But if you talk about Bajaj, they also thought that the scooters are getting old nowadays. And there's something like to bring up the Kawasaki KB100. Bajaj thought it would be a good mile muncher because this motorcycle, if compared to that of Suzuki or the Yamaha, was not great of a deal when acceleration is concerned. But because of its long wheelbase and good seating posture, and with that peppier two-stroke engine also, was a great option for those people who were wanderers. And at the point of time, highways were quite empty, and these motorcycles were roaming the highways all around. But for which we are making this video and we are talking about is yet to come. Do you believe that the Enfield Mini Bullet? Yeah, it's a motorcycle brought by Enfield with a Villiers two-stroke engine. Basically, it was supposed to be a 175cc engine, was up-tuned to be a 200cc engine with that same Albion 4-speed gearbox what you get in its 350cc 4-stroke counterpart. But for some reason it sounded like a Rajdut 175 if choked thoroughly. And this motorcycle was able to achieve 13 horses out of its 3-port induction system. But again, it was a long forgotten motorcycle and very rare and very scarcely you can able to have the basic verse of this motorcycle to be wandering around the streets. These motorcycles were just available only on the metro cities. Madras, Bombay and Delhi, that's it. So very rare people know about Enfield producing a 200cc motorcycle. But again, Enfield also produced a scooter for which we will be talking later about in some other video. But Enfield also tried to its best to give a befitting reply to those of Japanese two-stroke machines. But by the time when this motorcycle was launched, things were already made up. Enfield did the great mistake. And the game was over for this motorcycle. It was launched in 1982 and was discontinued as soon as in 1989. So it didn't saw the light of day when these Japanese motorcycles arrived. The competition was sheer fierce like anything. But the motorcycle for which we are talking about, the motorcycle for which I am making this video, is yet to come. All the two strokes, all the Japanese motorcycle manufacturers, all the Indian motorcycle manufacturers were making performance oriented, or should I say, gas hog motorcycles in the good intention of making the most fuel efficient motorcycle. But everybody was failing in the way. Because Japanese motorcycle manufacturers, they were good at making two strokes. You talk about the Kawasaki, you talk about the Yamaha, you talk about the Suzuki. Enfield India was busy of making the Enfield bullets for the Indian Army. Rajdut had no other option just to bring up the SHL motorcycle on its basis till the 90s. Yazdi was making its motorcycle for the busier rally motorsports back in Madras and in Karnataka. But with that good intention of making the high gas mileage motorcycle, everybody was making a gas hog motorcycle, or motorcycle which unintentionally became more powerful on its basis. But a motorcycle yet to came which just sipped gasoline. Behold the Lord, the mile muncher. The 4-stroke fuel efficient marvel from Honda. The Hero Honda CT100. World's #1. People are forgetting that something called Honda from Japan has got its master in making the little bit 4-stroke engines. Just imagine, could you imagine a motorcycle with a 4-stroke engine this much small? Rather, I should say the CT100 is big of a motorcycle. If you consider the Honda Cub was just a 50cc motorcycle, and mind it, it had no overhead cams. Rather, they were overhead valves just like Royal Enfield Bullet. The overall valve configuration generally takes a host of space in the engine's architecture. But Japanese, they are just making great in their small little bitty four-stroke engines. And here is this example. This engine, a 96 or 97cc, 7.5 bhp with Keihin 16mm carburetor. This motorcycle shook the whole Indian market with its gas economy. Was phenomenal in its maintenance. What you need to do is just inflate your tires correctly, put good amount of motor oil in that, and there you go. You don't have to literally think anything about this motorcycle. This motorcycle came in between where Yamaha and Suzuki launched their motorcycles in their two-stroke category. We witnessed the 1986 Hero Honda CD100. Hero, basically being a bicycle company, thought of bringing up this motorcycle manufacturing intent by bombarding its four-stroke Honda engine into the Indian market, which for a common man, for a middle class man, it was an impossible thing to witness. Silimon bhai, swagat nahi karoge hamara? Look at his face. Damn great. Oh my god, this killer looks. Instead of that, I am talking about the motorcycle. Three shades were basically there. This shade, what you are observing, is the blue, the red, and the other was a black colored one. The motorcycle back in the day was much advanced. As you can see, it had indicators, horns, headlamps, all were on DC. Yeah, except the headlamps which were running on the alternator of the motorcycle. And above all, these motorcycles were 12 volt at the first place, in comparison with that of Enfield Bullet or ESD or Rajdoot, or if you talk about the early Yamahas and Suzuki, what we generally talked about. They were all 6 volt electrics, but this motorcycle came for the first time with 12 volt electric. Hero Honda thought that at some point of time they will be bringing up the most powerful and the most ferocious looking, deep throated, high performing 4-stroke engine, but they failed. The thing is, if you see this Hero Honda Sleek, which looked more sportier, but basically it's that same CD100. So in no way this motorcycle ever achieved the top speed or the acceleration instant just like that of any other Japanese motorcycle which we've previously talked about. So Hero Honda mistook that and made a misadventure of making this Hero Honda Sleek, which was introduced in 1988 along with that of RX100 back in the day. But it lasted very small. It ended up its production facility in 1990s. It saw a very less span of time in its day. But if you look at the overall rear design of the motorcycle, it somehow reminds you of the Honda CBX 1000. You can Google that and you can see the rear tail lamp section is somehow similar to that. But again, it's that CD100 with no tuner whatsoever. This thing you cannot imagine if you have a Royal Enfield. This thing you can't imagine if you have a ESD. It is unthinkable, it is unimaginable with any other motorcycle back in the day. Even in today's scenario also. We are living in 2020s. And just keep your hand on your heart and with all your trueness, ask yourself, have you got any motorcycle till date which literally has fill it, shut it, forget it character? Because in today's scenario, very few motorcycles are there which can touch even 70 kilometers per liter. And there are evidences that with these Hero Honda CD100s, the motorcycle was able to achieve 95 kilometers per liter with some people. And was quite evident back in the day. And with little bit of maintenance, I mean there was no maintenance whatsoever. You just have to get your motor oil replaced at every 3000 kilometers. That's it. Air filters were need not to be checked because back in the day air was clean. But, and it's a big but, this motorcycle made a monopoly from the 80s all the way to the 90s. And here I have said the 1997. It's my date of birth, but at the same time was a great year era. We were witnessing the motorcycle which will be doing up its all 30 years of legacy, and still we can't get rid of it. Behold your breath, we are going to 1997 and we are witnessing the heck of a machine, the Hero Splendor. Look at her, how cute that bike is. And basically what Hero Honda did, nothing. If you see the CD100's frame, the crash bar was a bolt-on system which was bolted on in front of the engine. With that crash bar, you may consider the observation of twin cradles coming from top to bottom. So what Hero Honda did was they just welded up that leg guard, and that's it. The frame here we can see it's a double cradle frame, and that same teardrop fuel tank design from the CD100, but it was little bit budged up. The side cowls were bulged up, the graphics were made. Here we can see the bikini cowling with that headlamp, but rest everything is the same. You're observing that same 97cc engine, I guess, because back it was 96cc, and now at that point of time we are observing this motorcycle is 97cc's with that same Keihin 16mm Venturi carburetor, 12-volt electrics, and yes, a very important thing what it was added in the 1997 Hero Honda Splendor, the absence of fuel gauge was fulfilled with giving a fuel gauge in the motorcycle, as well as it housed a steering lock cum ignition switch. Because as you know, in many of the older motorcycles, what you have to do is to put up the steering lock. You need to do first, you have to take out the ignition switch from the ignition key from the ignition switch, and you have to lean right of the motorcycle handlebar to lock the steering. But that all was included back in the day. With revamped tail light design and the indicator turn signal design, with all electricals being refurbished and re-maintained, this motorcycle came in the Bharat Stage 2000 emission norm avatar back in 1997. This is the engine you should look for, no matter what it is going to be. The family bike. But yes, the motorcycle in the 2004 and 2005 came up with multi-reflected headlamps, multi-reflected tail lamps, revamped version of their graphics, revamped version of the speedometer console. You know, like the backlit of the speedometer was changed, the black color to yellow, yellow to white. You know, the meter console, the needles were changed, the grips were changed. Basically, the motorcycle remained all the same till date with little bit of nook and corner changings. That's it. Also, at the point of time when Hero Honda launched Splendor Plus back in 2003, they did another misadventure by bringing up a disc brake version of this motorcycle. It's a very rare sight to see. Along with Passion Plus, the Hero Honda Splendor Plus also came up with an optional disc brake in their segment. Electric Start came up in the Indian market along with Hero Honda Splendor back in 2009. As we all know that in 2010 or in 2011, Hero and Honda, they got both parted, and we witnessed it looks young and sensual. The Splendor NXG. Nothing much to be talked about. At the same motorcycle, if you can see the magneto cover, which is somehow reminiscent to that of CD Dawn or CD Deluxe. The Cafe Racer was another misadventure by Hero by bringing up the Splendor in its Cafe Racer avatar. This motorcycle was launched in 2014 by bringing up a mind that if Royal Enfield is making up its 500cc engine into a cafe racer, why not our legacy will do the same? But this motorcycle failed miserably like anything. This is the day what we were eager to see. This was a limited edition Hero Splendor in its 30th birth anniversary with Euro 4 norms. In this norm, the motorcycle went a mandatory frontal and rear drum brakes to be applied at the same point of time when you engage any front or rear brake levers. This motorcycle housed an automatic headlamp unit. At the point of time when your motorcycle starts, the headlamp glows automatically, which is a mandatory norm for the motorcycles to have nowadays. And finally, we get a fuel injected Euro 6 2020 Hero Splendor. But what I want to talk about is, do you imagine this is a motorcycle which was started back in the 1986 and is still present with us in 2020? There were numerous emission norms. There were numerous categories of performance orientation with the engine architecture. There were numerous people who were talking about what sort of engine should be in a motorcycle. But this is something even Royal Enfield changed from the split construction engine to their unit construction engine. And now they are bringing up something new in their 350cc segment. But here is the Hero Splendor. That same generic Honda 4-stroke engine. They are in Euro 6 version emission norm, and the most important part is now it is being fuel injected. So we can say the Hero Honda Splendor has become more and more efficient, a bit of crispier performance and all that. Now yes, this motorcycle is a great of a bike, great of a machine, has got its legacy. The present generation of this motorcycle houses a 5 ampere hour battery, which is big of a deal, all DC electric, and perhaps the headlamp is now glowing by the help of battery. I'm not sure about that. Correct me in the comment section if the headlamp glows with the battery or it takes a current from the alternator. Basically, it is that same engine with no changes whatsoever. Many motorcycles came, many motorcycles went away, many copied its engine design, and there are still numerous motorcycle manufacturers struggling with their 100cc products to compete with this motorcycle. But alas, this is something no one can take place of this. But what you are thinking of? Is this the right motorcycle what we all dream of? It is the only motorcycle what we can think about it. In my point of view, Hero should have brought something new, a very new, all new engine architecture, something which people have never witnessed of. People are buying Hero Splendor with no other option because they are getting bored of by looking to any other 100cc motorcycle. There is no excitement whatsoever. So in my point of view, it is something we should have to bring a separate entity in this motorcycle segment. But again, this was all about Hero Honda Splendor, or the Hero Splendor what we all know about. If you have anything to write, just get in the comment section, have your thoughts. If you have something related to interesting prospect or interesting memory for this motorcycle, bring up everything of yours in the comment section.